and welcome to this Sonic Talk special. We're very pleased to have a special guest. It's a one-on-one kind of thing, and that is Mr. Eric. I didn't ask how to pronounce your name. Eric Mouquet. I'm guessing that's about right.
Perfect, Eric Mouquet. Hello.
Excellent. Eric Mouquet, if you don't already know, which I'm sure you do, is the guy behind Deep Forest. They've got a new album coming out. It's kind of it's a crowd-funded project this time, whereas normally you've been signed to kind of major labels and done that whole kind of traditional route, right, Eric?
Yeah. I was for a long time. I was a Sony artist. And, because of the evolution of the music business, everything changed. So I think it's more easy now to go direct with the fan base and to make a kind of crowdfunding project.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very interesting way round of doing things. But let's kind of rewind a little bit, because obviously, you've got a fantastic musical history and heritage. I mean, you started out the Deep Forest project. I mean, before then, the Deep Forest project, before that started, were you kind of already into production and synthesizers and that sort of thing, or how did it start out for you?
Yeah, I started to be in the synthesizer very, very young. I got my first Moog when I was 15.
Wow.
And the project was when I was 30. So, 15 years of programming a synthesizer with the DX7, all the evolution from the old analogic stuff to the new digital material, computer things. So I really start when it was the time we cut the tape, everything.
Yeah.
And I discover in real time all the evolution of the computer, the new synthesizer, everything, and the plugging and everything. So yeah.
So did you start out classically trained, or were you kind of because France has a very strong heritage of electronic music, obviously with IRCAM and all of those other kind of good things, and I guess probably around about that time, Jean-Michel Jarre must have been a kind of doing his thing about the same time. So where did you come from a classically trained background?
No, I learned by myself. On the way to school, there was a music shop, and when I had time, I really stopped there and I tried to experiment on the keyboard, and that's how I started basically. And then, of course, playing with band, listening a lot of vinyl at that time, and trying to understand how things are going. And really a self-made man,
Oh, right. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I always like that. So were you, did you start out with kind of tape and then step sequencing and that side of things? What was the kind of route to, because obviously the music productions that you did back when you started Deep Forest, were cutting edge and, that side of things. But, there's a big evolution. I'm guessing, like many of us, you may have come through the Atari route, or whatever the French equivalent was.
Yeah, Sure. Well, with Deep Forest, Deep Forest was in 92. So in 92, we had already all this Atari, Falcon, all this notator, everything was already there. But when I started before, it was my first tape recorder was a TIC.
TIAC.
TIAC, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce in English, but and I got a Revox B77.
Yep, I had one of those too.
And we learn how to make a record to double track, everything, to make a echo, and so it was a good school,
Excellent. So Deep Forest, it's a very specific sound. I mean, it very much caught the kind of moment. I mean, there was the kind of slightly laid back beats of it, which was I hesitate to use the soul to soul kind of vibe, but that in itself created a whole sort of genre of slightly ambient, more laid back kind of club stuff. When you first started out, the idea of marrying the kind of ethnic recordings, which is where you started from, and this was a very new thing, right?
Yeah. It's happened just by chance, because at that time we had in France we have a big record store called Fnac. I don't know if you heard about it.
Fnac.
Kind of Power Tower, Tower Record, something like that. And they had at that time they have a department with ethnic world music. And I remember with my friend Michel, because we started together, Michel Sanchez and I, at the beginning, we bought some CD because we were just curious about new music. And one day in the studio, we put the CD on the CD player and we played the music around. And it came like that. We felt the magic of it. And that was the first time we had the idea to make something around ethnic material using our synthesizer.
So I'm guessing, I mean, was it a case of the first thing you did, which Sweet Lullaby? Can I just play a little clip of that, just audio wise, just so people who perhaps are not as experienced as us in the history might be able to recognise this. So this is the classic. That's the kind of flavour of the sound that it happened. So you're saying that was that the kind of first track that you worked on, or was it an evolution from that first moment into that world?
No. I think in the beginning you hear the water drum, from the pygmy. So we loop the water drum, and it creates already atmosphere. And we had some yodel from the pygmy Aka tribes as well. So it gives you a kind of kind of vibe like that. And it was quite easy, to add some chords and to try to make a melody around it with the flute. It was not complicated to do. We are just I remember we were in the studio and the music came very easily. And the first album was like that. Every time we experiment with ethnic or traditional sound, we are right in the moment. We have the right idea to put chord and to make rhythm around. And it was kind of evident, But I have to say something, When I play this to my friend, nobody understood it. And when we went to some label, in France, nobody wanted to sign it. It was very special. And I remember all my friends said, "Okay, are you sure? What kind of music is it?" It was not evident, to make it.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, so did you release it yourselves first before getting to the label and then get label interest, as was so often the case back in those days? It certainly was for me as well.
No, the thing was one guy at Sony at the time, it was CBS.
Yeah.
One guy really loves the album, and the guy wanted to make it, but the other guy from the production staff says, "They say no way, it's not. We don't know, we don't understand this music." But this guy say, "Okay, let me try," and they said, "Okay, let's try it," and it started like that. So it was really one guy who believed in the project, and then when it goes to radio, it started to become very big very quickly, actually. The first hit was in Australia. In Australia, they react as the very first time, and it become number one in Australia. So when the major companies saw that, when Sony saw that, of course, they started to push the promo. And then we get more audience in USA, in Europe. But Europe was quite the late. First was Australia, then USA, and at least Europe.
That's interesting. I always remember France, when I was doing pop work, was the slowest market to build because of the way that the charts work and the fact that there was a skew, wasn't there, to try and encourage indigenous artists, French artists, which is surprising that it took a while for you guys, I guess. So I'm curious to think about the technology that you were using back then. I mean, were you working with samplers, or do you lay them off to tape? I mean, how did you put that stuff together?
At that time, it was a sampler. It was probably the Hakai S900.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember the big button, was so tired, because you have to, with the small window, but a small screen. But we spend a lot of time, to loop everything in Akai. Yeah.
I guess, did you have to lay things off to tape as well? Because obviously the Akai memory was very limited in the S900 and the S950. It wasn't until the S1000 that we got stereo and up to 15 seconds at a go.
Yeah. And we use a lot of floppy disk. I remember we had Michel and I. We had like 6 or 7 Akai, to be able to store and to play all the loop at the same time.
Okay. I see how that worked then. So you were able to have multiples. And what about in terms of this?
It was mainly a MIDI setup at that time.
Yeah, it would have been, wouldn't it? What about that in terms of the sort of supporting instruments, the cast, if you like? I mean, were you utilizing kind of analog instruments back then, or because I mean, right then that would have been right in the middle of the M1 and all of that sort of period of time where that sort of stuff was ubiquitous, and it was almost tyrannical, wasn't it, that you had to use the sounds of the now, and that was down to the beats as well. So you kind of once you were known for that kind of groove, you sort of stuck with it, weren't you? I mean, were you using, what sort of instruments were you using back then?
I think one of the main, we have two main sources for the global sound of Deep Forest. One was the Roland GD 800.
Okay,
the flute is coming from this synth.
Right.
A lot of pad was done with the Roland as well. We use the Korg WS.
Yep.
I think probably South Korg M1, I'm sure. My DX7 as well. I had a lot of sound from the DX7, and basically, all the synth from that time, we use it.
Excellent. So I guess
the drum was I think was a old. I mean, not old, but a lean drum.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I'm guessing when you must have got, because when you're sampling, you were perhaps not using so much of the looping and that side of things, perhaps till later, because I'm sure I heard in later recordings there's some of those sort of classic beats that everybody around that time was using, and I guess that must have been samples, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember as I was spending a lot of time in the club at that time. It was a time of acid music in Belgium, because I was in Belgium at that time, and it gave me a lot of idea to experiment with sound and to loop on a single note, to try to make a pattern. And
yes, I remember there was a genre, I think it was Belgian techno, wasn't it? Very specific, it was really hardcore, wasn't it? And we used to call it nosebleed over here. I don't know why, because it was just kind of incessantly fast. Yeah.
I was in the club at that time.
So those are your roots there, right? So the other thing that's interesting, because obviously once you started down this path, I mean, was there then? When the track went out, was the album ready to go, or did you then have a mad scramble to create the rest of it to go with it? It was more of a traditional route, was it?
No, the album was done in one time, and when the album was ready, it went to the record company and they released it. So actually, it was a short album. If you remember it, it was probably 8 or 9 tracks, not so long, and. Actually, we were really surprised, Michel and I, to see the success of it, because we saw just a side project. I was doing at that time a lot of recording sessions for French artists and advertising. So my main job was not Deep Forest, was a session musician.
I was going to ask how you managed to accrue all of those lovely instruments to play, but obviously, if you were already working in the industry, then then that's of no surprise. And was there a kind of excuse me, was there then pressure to find, because presumably when you sourced the ethnic kind of aspect to that album, was that something that you found in one place, or were you starting to make your own field recordings and that sort of thing to kind of generate more?
So it was a process. For the first album, it was the source was only the CD we bought from the music shop, and then when the album was ready to release, of course we have to clean all the sample in the normal way, and most of the CD was coming from UNESCO, Okora Music, all these labels who make a catalog of ethnic things, very very beautiful music in this catalog. And then, because of the success of the first album, then we were able to travel because we got more royalties, and we wanted to start to record the material by ourselves, Michel and I. So we started to travel a little bit. The second album, Bohème, was still, I will say, half and half. Half of the sample from the CD library, I mean from the Okora UNESCO library, and half for our own recording tape. I bought at that time a small DAT, portable DAT with a stereo mic, and I started to record it, And the more we go to the Deep Forest production, the more we use our own music. And recently, all the album I do now, there is nothing from the CD. It's a musician coming here, or me recording musician outside. So it's just an evolution.
So were you taking like a kind of portable writing rig on the road? So you're going, or were you sort of compartmentalizing? One part of the process would go and record, and then the next part you bring it back and work on it, or were you working on it in situ sometimes? Because I know that was quite challenging, because obviously portable in the 90s is not the same as portable as it is now, right?
Exactly. I will say the third album, Comparsa, was really like that. We traveled first for 6 months to Cuba, Belize, Mexico, Madagascar, different places to collect. We wanted to collect a lot of material, and then we went in the studio for another 6 months, 8 months to compose the music. This was for the third album, and later, because it was probably more easy to meet people, internet was coming, a lot of new things, happening for everybody. So it was much more easy to contact the people through internet and to meet them in the studio. So and now, when I do an album, most of the time I invite people to come here. So it's much more. It's not as we go in the countryside with the mic, it's not like that anymore. Now people coming here, and I record them in my studio.
Right. Okay. And do you have, in that part of the process now, do you have an idea of what you want from them, or are you trying to kind of get them to be themselves and maybe sing some traditional folk tunes or whatever?
Yeah, I always want something from the traditional skills they have, from their culture, because I'm interested to share different influences in my music. So the basic, we always start by improvisation.
Right.
We put the instrument here in the studio, and we start to make music, and something happens all the time.
That's an interesting way, because I think there's always been there's this very definite divide in electronic music, isn't there? There's this sort of meticulous studio-based production and kind of polishing, and I kind of use the sort of editing. When you've been editing hi-hats for too long, perhaps you should walk away for a bit, and yet you're still using the kind of the notion of the moment of the spark of inspiration, to use that as the way to build things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I also noticed there's quite a lot of, because now, moving forward a little bit further, obviously, you're the new album EVO DEVO, which has a lot, what it sounds like, I'm going to quiz you about this, a lot of analog instruments in there, because presumably when you were working back through your timeline of working, most of the time you would be using the current crop of whatever the electronic instruments were, which weren't necessarily analog at the time, right? So did you make a transition?
Oh yeah, I had my period a few years ago with everything was plugging.
Yeah.
My studio was really clean. I have just a big master keyboard, 80 notes, and a screen, and everything was in the box. And it was nice. It was you have this feeling that you can control everything. You can store your preset, and so it was very easy to work. But I always have my synth, in the background, and sometimes you just plug one, and there is something magical about all this machine I have around me. So step by step, I started to bring them back, and one day I put my big wave, the Waldorf wave.
Yeah. Well, it's the classic, isn't it? It features in the video, which I was going to.
It's a dream synthesizer. So I say, okay, I should put it in the middle just in the middle of the speakers, and try to see what I can get with this. And I was so in love. So that is there, and I put all my synth around. The desk is on the side now. It's just a keyboard studio. It's not a producer studio anymore. It's a keyboard studio.
I've seen that before, actually, where there's like a graph, isn't there, where you kind of get to the point where you make some decent money out of an album release, and you think, I need these kind of things, and you buy maybe a big analog desk because everybody loves that sort of sound, and then gradually the analog desk gets more and more things put on it, so that you can't actually see the analog desk. It's maybe just a pair of faders or a few subgroups, and it becomes a kind of summing mixer to a degree. So you're working in and out of the box at the same time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I will show you. The maybe make a panorama. I don't know if you see the euphonics desk over there.
Okay, right, yep.
The euphonic is just there, and
there's no light on it. It's in the shadows.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and so it's basically a mixer, with all the fader at 0 dB.
Yeah,
and the synth are going there. So, and it's a sum some
Use
mixer
it for
because
summing, right.
everything goes to the master bus, and it gives something special. It's not like you sum in the computer. And around me, it's all things.
Oh, so what do we got at the top there? Is that a Moog, multi-Moog?
Yeah, it's a multi-Moog. This one has some modification. The multi-Moog has a kind of at the beginning it was a sensor, kind of pressure things.
Yeah.
But I had to a guy in Paris to modify it and to put this a little pot here so I can control the pressure as a CV, controller.
Ah, okay.
So it's much more. It's open, really open the synth. You can the pulse modulation. You can control it and have a regular pulse, instead of just pushing it. It's really nice modification.
Ah, that sounds good. They look like is that a few SEMs over there? What are those there? The white ones. They look a bit like Oberheim's, but I can't tell from here.
I have two OBMX, Oberheim OBMX.
Right.
6 voice. So it's one of my favorite synths as well. A lot of people hate this synthesizer. I don't understand why, because it's really nice synthesizer with a very beautiful sound. And when you try to program it and you make something with the matrix, the key is the matrix. You can program you can route almost everything to everything, and it starts to be very beautiful.
Ah, okay. And then obviously you've got the wave behind you there, which are notorious. They're notoriously temperamental to keep going. Have you been able to kind of keep yours alive okay, or does it sort of require a bit of work every once in a while?
This one was okay, still alive. I changed the floppy disk. I put a USB drive.
Fair, yeah. So that seems like an essential modification.
yeah, it's much more easy, to deal with your program. And here I have I don't know if you can see it, an Andromeda.
Yeah.
Nice analog synth as well. And yeah, basically my new album was done with this. Just few plugins for the reverb and delay.
Yeah.
But basically it was only with this material. And the Buchla. So the Buchla.
I thought I saw a book. Right. So what Buchla system is that? Is that a 200E?
200E. It's not complete, just a few models. I'm really new, to the Buchla system, but I really love it. And so I start with few modules, and probably it will grow, but I need to learn step by step.
Well, it's a very different. I mean, I don't know what because I'm imagining, with Musique Concrète and those kind of building blocks in terms of French synthesis. Would you say the French synthesis is more aligned with East Coast or West Coast in those kind of, if you're thinking about it in those sort of traditional American synthesis terms, or does it have its own kind of route? Because there aren't terribly many French synthesizers. I mean, Arturia, of course, but it's, that's more in more recent times.
I think, of course, Arturia is more like Moog. It's East Coast, but the electronic music history. I mean, for the ear cam and the concrete music. Is more related, in my opinion, it's more related to the West Coast.
It's very experimental. I remember as a child going to the Centre Pompidou when I was probably 10 or 12. I was just starting to get into the thought of synthesizers and walking around and seeing the ERCAM signs and things, and just feeling really kind of like, oh, I'd love to see what's behind some of those closed doors. Do you find? I mean, because obviously yourself, you are an established French electronic music artist. Is there a kind of support from the governmental support? Because I know that in France they're very strong on funding ERCAM, or certainly have been, and that's really unusual to have an actual support from the government for actual electronic music. I mean, it's a very unusual situation. Is that still the case?
I never get any single euro, unfortunately. No, I have a friend at ERCAM, Frédéric Rousseau. Maybe you heard about him. He was for a long time. He was in the team with Vangelis,
right,
and with Cheljar as well. And now he's in charge of the development of new technology in ERCAM. So a lot of the Flux plugin. You heard about it?
I've heard of it. I remember there was a system. It escapes me now what it was that they were developing. It was a software system, wasn't it, for a long time?
they developed some reverb, some matrix to put the surround in a binaural. A lot of things, very interesting development. And but I have to pay for my plugin in France. The government,
of course,
don't give me for free.
That would be interesting. Plugins via social security sort of payments. That would be we'll pay you in NFRs for ERCAM plugins. That would be an interesting concept. Yes, unlikely. I agree. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a message from our sponsors. I want to say thank you very much to iZotope for their continued sponsorship of the podcast, and of course they want to tell you a little bit about Ozone 7. Shortly after this insert, we'll be giving you details of the next competition. Obviously, as this isn't a live show, I can't announce the winner, but we'll give both winners next week, so stay tuned.
Produce rich, full, professional-sounding tracks with the critically acclaimed mastering tools in Ozone and Ozone Advanced. Now, the latest iZotope innovations in Ozone 7 bring modern and vintage processing to the forefront of the music production experience. Updated for Ozone 7, Ozone's highly regarded maximizer features a brand new frequency-specific IRC4 algorithm that delivers transparent mixes with less pumping and distortion. Use it to smooth out an unwieldy mix, or tame the kick drum peaks without affecting the vocals. The Dynamic EQ, now in both the advanced and standard versions of Ozone, lives and breathes with your audio, giving you more effective control over your sound without coloring your entire mix. Harness the precision of an equalizer and the musical ballistics of a compressor in one integrated processor. New for Ozone 7, vintage-inspired processing puts nostalgic tone at your fingertips to bring the creative color and character of analog hardware to your digital recordings.
iZotope are giving you the chance to win a copy of Ozone 7, their excellent mastering suite. All you have to do is tweet the following. We need you to tweet the hashtag MixGlue and the hashtag Ozone7 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. That's the hashtag MixGlue and the hashtag Ozone7 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. In next week's live show, we'll be able to bring you the results of last week's and this week's show competition. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Back to your interview. So moving forward now, is it all right if I play a little clip of the Sing with the Birds? So let me just, is it all right if I play a little clip of that? I'll just play this in. This is basically the poster track that you've used to make for the video to trail the whole project. And this is shot obviously in your studio. Right, I'm not going to play it all. I'm going to encourage people to go and search that out for themselves. Now, the first thing, obviously, in videos like that, when you're playing, are those the instruments that are playing those sounds? Because there are some really kind of quite bold analog style sounds at the front of that. What is it that you're using? And they're really in your face. That you're not shy about putting them there. Was that? Excuse me. What was that? There's the low sound, the do 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 do, and then the odd.
The low bass is the obey mix.
Okay.
Baby do do do, and the very bright, sparkling song at the beginning is the obey mix as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the pads, of course, are the waves.
Right.
So at the beginning with this, you have only these two things, and it's really analog, And the reverb is Eventide H3000.
Okay. I see you've got an H9 pedal there, which is something that is almost impossible to switch off once you start using it, right?
Exactly. This one is on the Andromeda because the FX on the Andromeda are not so great, so I just bypass the FX and put this Eventide on the Andromeda. And the wave is going through another Eventide Ultra Harmonizer.
Right.
And the OBMX is just going to a Lexicon, PCM 90,
Yeah.
very simple reverb.
It looks like what you're doing there is, so are you dedicating certain instruments to certain instrument stroke signal paths, so that's the sound that okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I organize my keyboard so I can play the music almost in one track. Of course, not the overdub, but I can play everything in real time.
Ah, okay. And you record those discreetly, presumably to separate stereo mixes or what have you, right?
So, a lot of track in this album was done as it starts with improvisation, and I just put the computer and my step sequencer. I have a circlone, so they are
okay.
the same tempo, and I start to record like a tape recorder.
Right.
And but sometimes it's just stereo track. So I need to make the right balance with everything, and I play with it. And when it's recorded, and when I like the track, then I can produce later and add overdub and everything, cut, edit, whatever you want. But most of the time it's just a big improvisation, and I start the song like that.
And when you are improvising, because I notice there's quite a lot of piano in here, certain elements of piano. Are you? Do you start there, or do you tend to find a signature sound that you think, that sparks the idea for a track, or does it maybe come from the ethnic sample? I mean, or is it always different?
It's different because this album took like almost 6 or 8 months, to get everything together. So it's hard to say. Sometimes I go to the piano, I put the mic, and I have an idea. There is no recipe really.
I mean, in terms of the original idea, are you the sort of guy that wakes up in the middle of the night and mumbles into your iPhone with a kind of idea for a song, or do you does it tend to happen when you're in the environment that you make the music in?
Yeah, I'm very lucky because this studio is in my house. So I have to, over there is a kitchen. So when I wake up in the morning, I just take a coffee and come here, and everything is ready. So every time I have an idea, I can just come here and just experiment. And sometimes you have no idea for 10 days, But I spend all my day here experimenting some new stuff. So it's a long process.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can imagine it must be. I mean, do you spend a lot of time working on a sound that would then maybe spark another riff? Because I mean, that's the thing I find when I'm, if I'm reviewing a synth, which is an entirely different process. But what tends to happen is, I'll have a synth that I'm reviewing, and I'll find a sweet spot somewhere, and I'll develop maybe a little melody that works on that, and then by the end of the review, I can noodle something that has musical meaning. I mean, do you find that that's a similar kind of route?
Yeah. That's why my computer, is always ready to record. I have always a stereo track ready to record. So when you get the sweet spot, you just record and improvise and save for another time. So it's exactly like that. Yeah.
And what is it you work in? I mean, because obviously the DAW is, for many people, it's the constant, isn't it? Because it's so difficult to switch between recording and DAW environments, and perhaps less so if you're working more in the moment, because it's just the digital data. Then, what is it you're using?
Now I'm using Logic. For a long time, at the beginning, I was using Cubase. When I did Deep Forest a long time ago, it was Cubase. I have a period where I was using Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And now for maybe 6-7 years now, I'm stick with Logic for the studio. When I'm on stage, I have all my keyboards, so I play live. But on the side, I have Ableton Live just to trick the loops and to make the playback track, on the side.
Sure. So you do play live as well with all of this stuff.
Yeah. Some not in the studio a lot, but on live, yes.
Okay.
On tour.
And just sort of going back again to the Deep Forest side of things, because I guess that was very studio based. Did you tour that as well?
Sorry,
did you tour like the first couple of albums of Deep Forest, or was that more of a studio?
Yeah. I'm touring a lot. Especially this past 4 years. I tour a lot. I was lucky to have a couple of musicians. A bass player, his name is Alioune Wade, is a guy from Senegal, such a great musician. And I have all my friends, and we are so happy to meet and to go on stage all together. And what we try to do on stage is just to be like I will not say jazz band because it's not the style of the music, but the spirit of the jazz is there. I mean, we improvise a lot. That's why I like to have Ableton, because I have my fixed pattern in Ableton.
But you can...
I can trick then, loop and stop and whatever you want to do. But with my musician, I'm improvising, so it gives something very alive.
Oh, wow. This is sounding more and more like fun. Okay, I'm going to start playing a couple more tracks because there's some sounds in there that I really would like to identify, and but I have a feeling you're just going to say it's all the OBMX. But let's see. Right, so the first one is this one, which is track 2. Now that to me sounds like a slide guitar, but not quite. Is it a slide guitar or is it a synthesizer?
This one.
Ah, it's a it is really. I mean, is that a patch that you kind of crafted, or it just sort of fell out of it? I mean, I'm guessing you know this very well, right?
You know, the wave, you can make your own wavetable, you know that. So I did a lot of wavetable, and one of the wavetable I did when I was programming with a very short filter attack, almost like a click. And I was playing, and I got this crack, like
the plectrum.
Yeah, like a plate, yeah. And it's this beautiful instrument, It's not a complicated sound. It's just probably something like a sine, and another one like when you sync an oscillator, on the sine, and a very short filter attack, and that's
right.
it.
I've got you.
And a vibe, a stereo vibe on the VCA. That's it.
It sounded like also there's just some really long languid kind of almost filtering on the reverb as well. It was quite a complex sound. Is there something going on there?
Yeah, this is the Eventide as well. The Eventide is not, the wave, there is a auxiliary input and output. And so the ultra harmonizer is going into the wave, so you can modulate as well. Right. It's not like an extra effect after the sound. The harmonizer is going through the wave and goes through the VCA.
Right, so you can shape it additionally. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
it sounds like a whole lot of fun. I was also going to ask you about it because do you work on all of this stuff alone, or do you have people involved in the rhythm or engineering? I mean, how does that kind of tend to work for you?
No, I'm just alone.
Right,
I'm a poor guy alone.
And what are you using for the beats? Because I mean, some of it's very sort of I would say European dance influence, and some of it's just not at all. It's something completely different.
The beat is just MFB tones bar.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it's just basic MFB tones bar. Of course, then I go to the compressor and some EQ, but basically it's just the MFB.
And are you using drum machines a lot, or do you prefer to program beats in the computer? How does it work best for you?
No, the tones bar, I mean, it's just I don't use the sequencer for the tones bar. The tones bar is just linked in MIDI to the circlone.
Right.
And the circlone is my sequencer. I mean, I create my pattern on the circlone.
Gotcha. Okay, right. Next, this is track 3, and this is, I wanted to identify the sound. Right, let me see if I've got my buttons right. I've just downloaded a new piece of software that allows me to load clips and kind of edit them to the point where I want to play, so I don't have to find them. But I'm only using it for the first time today. This is... this beautiful bass, slow pulse width, it sounds like.
Yeah.
G-Vitar.
Yeah.
And there's some piano in there.
Yeah.
So that sound just made me feel very nice. And I wondered what it was.
It's your OBMX.
Right, okay. I am not at all familiar. I'm going to have to do a quick search on the OBMX because I told
you it's a fantastic synthesizer.
Let me have a look. OBMX, right. Vintage synth. I'm going to Vintage Synth Explorer. Right. Okay, this is what it looks like. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
Sometimes I see on some different internet site, there is a lot of hate for this synthesizer.
Right.
I don't know why. Probably because the presets are really not good at all. Really, it's really bad. When the first time I got it, the first time when you get a synthesizer, you just switch and you explore the preset, and they are really, really bad. And it took me a little time, to understand and to program it, because I don't know, it's Don Buchla designed it at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
For example, if you go to the filter button, if you go for the front panel, it doesn't go from 0 to full. It's like something bizarre, and you need to program the matrix to make the filter full open and full close. And if you don't do that, you think the filter is really weak. So there's a lot of things like that you can do. You can even put a double matrix, a double modulation on the filter, and you have much more further. It's very strange how it's built, but when you know this, it's very efficient.
Well, that sounds like a top tip there, Eric. That sounds brilliant. And again, the beats in there, the hi-hat sounded very synthetic or analog. Was that again the Tanzbar?
Yeah, same. Yeah. I use a few instruments on this album.
And do you was that a conscious thing? When you're working on a piece of work, do you try and kind of go, right, this is my band, if you like, this is my sound palette, I just would like to try and stick with this, obviously all the instruments I want to use with this, rather than just go, I can have everything I want, let's just go crazy?
Now this time I wanted to use only this because as I told you, I put all my analog back around me, so I need to reorganize my workflow.
Yes.
And it's very important, to have a good workflow, so you can be creative and not always looking how to do that. So with this setup right now, I can play, as I say, everything almost in live situation, and the computer is just a tape recorder basically. So I'm stick with this configuration, but it's so rich. You can go so deep when you try to program your own sound, that it's not a limitation at all.
Right. And is that an approach you take for each body of work? Do you kind of try and design a slightly different or new workflow for each one, so that so that's what defines the difference, as well as obviously your own creativity?
Yeah, and something I do all the time is probably just the opposite. I try to reproduce the same sound on different synths.
Okay.
And doing that, it's like I feel it's like in a classical orchestra, symphonic orchestra, where you have solo violin, quatuor violin, 8 violin or 16 violin, and when you produce, let's say, a single square pulse pad, if you do it on Andromeda, almost the same on Wave and almost the same on the OBMX. You will have this kind of square pulse wave. You recognize it, but they are all different. And in the mix, they are taking different different place in the mix. So that's how I work. And then I adjust everything according to...
Is that how come your pads always sound so massive?
Yeah.
That's very okay. You're giving away far too much here, I feel, but that's a brilliant idea. I must try that. Okay, right. I'm on to the next track. Let's see where I am now. I've got. Oh yes, this is interesting. The way that you use the filter on this, I'm very curious about this as well. This is Ome's song. I think I pronounced that correctly. And what interests me about this is the very specific harmonic movement in the filter that becomes part of the melody, or it's not just the drone, it's got a very cyclical feel to it. I listened to that for ages, actually. I better stop. But so tell me about that. Is that OBMX as well?
No. So the no OBMX in this one. The percussion, like a bongo, of course, it's the Buchla.
Yeah. Right. And is that like so you're
for the bongo.
And what is that? Is that the low pass gate where you're pinging them? Is that how that works? Because I'm very unfamiliar with East Coast stuff. West Coast.
Yes, it's the mode when you put in it's I don't know the name in English. Okay, it's probably the low pass, but there is a name. Sorry. I forgot it. Vactral filter.
Ah, okay.
You know?
Yes.
Vactral gives it this sound. It goes like a almost acoustic thing. So when you put a very snappy sound through the Vactral with a short attack and short release, you got this snappy bongo. So I started this song like that. Then I put the wave, you know, all the in the background harmonic, not the sparkling sequence, but the background sequence. It's from the wave, and it's a wavetable I created, and I just scan the wavetable in a, you know, with a LFO. I don't remember if probably the LFO is sync as well on MIDI, so everything is moving at the same time. On the top of it, you have the DSI Pro 2, you know, from Def Smith.
Yep.
And so it's just a sparkling sound, and I move it. I move the filter a bit, and I play the keyboard accordingly to the harmony I want to have. So everything was created in live situation.
So that kind of, it almost sounds like you're tuning the filter. It's with that sort of that's wavetable. Then is it that just that scanning of those harmonics at the very beginning?
Yeah. So when you move a little bit, you know, you and so I don't remember, but probably because sometimes it's very simple and old, you know, filter. So probably at the end I edit a bit, so I can reproduce a pattern.
Wow.
Which is make it more musical at the end.
I've got you. Oh, this is interesting. All right, okay. I've got another one. This one is called Tibet. Now, let me see. This is what's the opening sound. I was interested in this. There's a lot of kind of modulation randomization going on there. A lot of movement going on. Is that all the same synth at different registers, or are they right? Okay.
Now the very first sound you hear, actually, this is a plugin.
Ah.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but you're right. This is a plugin, and the first one is. Let me think about it. I think is a Circle plugin. You know this synth?
Yes, are they Irish developers? I think Circle Synth. I think I've heard about that. Let me have a look. Let's see if I can bring up a web page there. Yeah. Okay, and that's that. Oh no, that's not really going to Circle plugin synth. Let me see if I can find it.
So it's probably when I demo it, I probably found this preset and I trick it.
This one
and
Circle.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ah, okay.
Exactly. And but when you hear the bass note, boom, boom, this is the OBMX coming in.
Okay, I'm seeing a common theme here. It really seems like you've really got inside the OBMX and kind of made it, because it has the same notion of the sound in the way that the modulation is enveloped effectively and is faster and slower, but it's a different sound. Right? Okay.
On the OBMX, you have 4 envelopes. When you, of course, you need to keep one for the VSA, but I mean you have 3 envelopes to modulate, and they are loopable. So
that sounds like, when was this made? Because it sounds actually pretty advanced in terms of these are the sort of things that we're seeing now in modern synths, and we're thinking, oh, this is new stuff, but obviously it's not. Let me see. There's probably going to say on my OBMX page I've got here.
No, Don Buchla is a genius, you know.
So many say. Let me see, when did it come out? I've got this here. So this is the Polyphony LFO. When was it released? Specification. 1994. So it's quite late, I suppose, for OB stuff. Yeah. That would have been after the Matrix 1000. Was it one of the last things to come out from Oberheim?
Matrix 12, no?
Matrix 12, Matrix 6, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Perhaps so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. I think they did an OB12 later, but it was a VA. It was not a pure analog.
Right.
Mm. And you know, at the end of this song, Tibet, you have these analog chords, which is the OBMX as well. And I just resolve the chord as a major chord at the end.
I might be able to play that. Is it this bit?
They're very, very, very late. Yeah. Here. No, the third, the major third is a bit out of tune. It's not a perfect third, but it's so
That's
beautiful.
lovely. No, that's lovely. It's got it. There is. I mean, just listening to that, as in solo, there's a Vangelisness about it. That sort of brassiness. I mean, are you using the? I guess are the filters in the OBMX? They do that two-pole. They're two-poled, are they?
There is two filters. One is a ladder, Mouquet type of filter, and another one is the same filter.
Right.
So kind of Oberwan. So I think what you hear at the end is just the same.
Yeah.
SEM,
it's got a
iPad.
more of a kind of pointy,
Yeah.
narrow. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Right. So let's see. Right. There's one more track here that is. Oh, well, no, that's "Sing with the Birds," which obviously we've gone through there. And so the idea. Let me just go to the. This is the EVO DEVO site. So basically, you are basically looking to do a kind of. It's almost like pre-release in the same way that old school record labels would go out and they would do pre-sales to shops, and then they'd know how many to print up, and they do that. It sort of feels like a little bit that this model almost equates to that. So you basically get people to pre-order, and then you can get them the stuff. It seems pretty straightforward. Is that the sort of model that you're thinking about? Obviously, there's lots of other bonuses there as well you're doing.
Yeah, I had two options. The first option was just to release digital and probably found a deal with Amazon for physical things, and just to let the CD just go like that. Another idea was to try to involve the fan base I have on Facebook. So I saw a lot of crowdfunding project. I saw a lot of sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Pledge. And I went to London to meet the people at Pledge. And first of all, they like the album, which is important when you want to work with a team.
Yeah.
And we decided to work with them because I was looking for a new way to promote my album, a new way to introduce, not just to release it in the store and wait, but a way to involve the people. To support my work. So we started with like a traditional campaign. I mean, in the next month we will make something more like a remix contest. I will put the stem of a song available so people can download it and make music with it. We will release the remixings. So it will be something. I want something more. In terms of communication with the fan base, I receive so much message on my Facebook that it's important for me to be in touch with the people.
Yeah, I think that's. And it's a good way. I mean, I guess if you're established, it's a much more sensible way of doing things. You can directly interact with your fan. I was talking to another artist recently, and they said it's kind of really liberating to be able to do that.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess that the danger of doing it this way is obviously the internet generation are incredibly impatient. So, is there? Do you find that there's pressure now to finish up and release it, or are you kind of done and you're just waiting until the campaign's done?
The album is done. The only thing I was not expecting when I started, because I wanted to make a vinyl release as well.
Right.
And the album you have to be 19 minutes on each face.
Yeah.
And which is complicated because the album is too long. So I had the choice to remove one or two tracks, or I have a choice to make a double cut vinyl.
Right.
But I choose a double cut vinyl. So I'm working now on the extra song for the vinyl, and it's almost done. It's just a question of mastering now.
Okay. And presumably, are you going to be touring this as well when it comes out? I mean, do you think that there's that traditional route is still available? Because I mean, obviously, lots of the way that the music business is set up now. I mean, touring is often more about back catalogue than promoting current product.
Yeah, you always have to play your classic song. If I go on stage, I have to play Sweet Lullaby. Of course, people want to hear it, but I try to play like 60% of the new material and 40% of the classic sound.
All right, okay. And that must be, I mean, what are you taking out rig-wise? So you say you take Ableton, which allows you to move the arrangement around a little bit and be a bit more informal with it and move stuff around. And is that kind of it? I mean, because the other obviously the real pressure, particularly when touring, is to make the footprint of the traveling circus, as it were, as small as possible. So are you mixing on stage, or do you have front of house? I mean, how does that work?
So everything is in. I put all my sound, all my sample, everything in two computers. I have two MacBook Pro where everything is inside, and I use it main stage to split all the sound. Then when I go stage, I just need to rent MIDI keyboard. Basically, I rent 3 keyboard, one piano, 88, one 6,
Yeah.
And I get all my setup like that. So with only 2 computers. One small. I use a lemur.
Okay. You've still got one. Good for you.
Yeah. I'm driving the Ableton with this.
Yeah.
So it's very light. I just travel with one suitcase in the plane, and it's really easy.
Is the temptation? I mean, this is the other thing that I always find about particularly when talking with artists who've had a long association with electronic music. The current generation and all of us, we are very romantic about the notion of analog synthesizers, but in reality, taking that sort of stuff on the road and using it is actually much more troublesome than sometimes it's worth. I mean, we know Jean-Michel Jarre does that, but he's got probably much higher budgets and is playing huge kind of stage venue. Are you tempted to any temptation to take some analog stuff on the road as well?
I think it will be very hard. It's very too expensive to travel, to take the plane with all the flight case, everything. It's too expensive now. No, I'm afraid for the live situation we have to play with the computer, with the plug and everything. It's much more safe. I will not take the risk not to take my wave on stage. It's difficult.
I know a damp night at an outdoor gig, and goodness knows what might happen, right?
Yeah.
So what's next then? So when's the actual release of the album? When's it slated for? The actual date that we're going to be able to get hold of it?
I think it will be mid-December, beginning of, between 10 and 15, 20, before Christmas anyway.
Okay. And people can find that on, as I say, on Pledge Music, pledgemusic.com, and the project's Deep Forest, that's one word. And also you've got a big presence on Facebook, and, do you find that there's more of your time spent service? Because, in previous, iterations of the record business, it would be record company would contact your manager would then say, yes, Eric is available for X, Y, and Z. Now it's almost like you have to give almost 100% access to all of your time to kind of send this stuff out. Can you manage that okay? Do you find it's intrusive, or do you find it's more fun?
No, I think it's time consuming, because you have to spend at least 1-2 hours every day on internet just to answer the message if you want to keep the good relationship with the fan base. And so it takes time. But I try to do that sometime in the morning, and when it's I'm waking up very early. When it's 10 in the morning, then I go to the studio and I switch. I just don't go to the computer until late.
Right, so you compartmentalising it is a good, Oh, okay. Eric, it's been an absolute honour to talk to you. I'm just thrilled that we've been able to spend some time with you, and have been very generous with telling us how you got some of those sort of things. So the album EVO DEVO is going to be available soon. You can go to Pledge, like we say, to actually pre-book your copy, and I thoroughly recommend it. I've been looking at you very kindly sent me a pre-release version, and I've been listening to it a lot. So thank you very much, Eric. It's been a real pleasure.
You're really welcome, Nick. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it for this Sonic Talk special. Thank you very much for watching. As we say, do look up Eric Mouquet and Deep Forest. You'll be able to get hold of all his online coordinates if you look. Easy peasy. Thanks for watching. See you next time.